note, which perhaps all of you have read. So these are not answers, these are just some stray responses that I had when I read that note. I'll start with the title of this session, the panel, which is called The Great Indian Novel. Yes. The Great Indian Novel. And I must say what struck me immediately, and I rather liked that, was the fact that all three words here are such flexible categories with completely open borders, completely shifting possibilities. And I thought that's really something that's perhaps the first thing to talk about and first thing to consider. Great, what is that? It's a shifting paradigm. And what's great today is not great tomorrow, and what's not known today is great 500 years from now. So it's a very, very tentative, shifting, lively, vibrant category. The same with the Indian, and indeed the same with the novel. So that's something I thought which throws out possibility of a lot of discussion and debate. There was also a little quote that Jatin sent, the reference to Mr. Salman Rushdie, who says that nothing of worth is being written in India in the non-English languages. As always, I find reading that and responding to that a little distasteful. I also find it a slightly false position to have to talk always in combative terms between English and other Indian languages. But willy-nilly one has to address it sometimes and talk about that. It made me think of whether a writer is anyway a good person to be talking about critically and analytically about literature and various such issues, whether a writer is not best off writing. And certainly I am, and perhaps Salman Rushdie is too. The irresponsibility and meandering that can produce excellent works creatively in creative writing may not have the same effect when you make bombastic, stupid statements and judgments of the kind that Salman Rushdie did, where I'm taking that up only because he brought up, touched upon the issue of translation. And he said that, as a matter of fact, he had not read much non-English except in translation, and that also very little. Now that's interesting, because how do you put alongside a work in your language and from an ambience and various frames of reference that you know very well, alongside some individual works in translation, and doesn't that become a very unequal exercise? So I thought that's another thing we really do need to talk about, translation, which is at the best of times an incomplete exercise, exciting, necessary, but something which needs constantly to be worked on, I think, much more than it is being done at present. And I'm sure all of you realize this, but it makes me think often of literature as a sort of theatre, where in translation one relies almost only, or too often, only on the storyline, and loses many other energies that go into the making of a creative work. And those other energies will be, the architecture of the piece, the sonority, the cadence of the form and the language, the inventiveness of the storytelling, and all that, if it is not being attempted in the translation, and it's not easy, but it has to be attempted, then so much is lost and only a base, bare story remains. And of course, one never knows how good the original work is. And I come from Hindi, and I know that there are writers who almost cannot be translated because no one has the wherewithal to try all this. This Krishna Sopti, for instance, Renu, Fanishwarnath Renu, they're outstanding works. So I think these are some of the basic issues, that I thought could and should be talked about in this panel, and we should just enjoy the conversation, and I'm sure other people will have other things to say. That's all. Thank you.
Sure. 4.5. નમસ્કાર. હું બહુ સાનો କିନ୍ତୁ ମୁଁ ନିଜ ଭାଷାରେ କଥା ବ୍ୟକ୍ତ କରିବାକୁ ଚାହେଁ. ମୁଁ ଜ୍ଞାନୀ ନୁହେଁ କି ବିଜ୍ଞ ନୁହେଁ, ମାତ୍ର ମୁଁ ଲେଖେ ଏବଂ ନିଜକୁ ବ୍ୟକ୍ତ କରେ. ତେଣୁ ମୁଁ ଆଜି ଏହି ମଞ୍ଚରୁ ଉପସ୍ଥିତ ଜ୍ଞାନୀ ଗୁଣୀ ମାନଙ୍କ ଆଗରେ ତାହା ହିଁ କରିବାକୁ ଚାହେଁ. I am not a very ଜ୍ଞାନୀ writer. I write for masses. Maybe that's what has got me to these 52 publications which I stand with. I write for the Gujarati women who finish their household, sit comfortably on their sofa in the afternoon and read my novels. I fail to understand the forms and the other things of literature. I am not literature educated. I am a simple, very simple writer of my own language. But yes, I am here and I am invited to talk about the novel. And what I have understood is that the novel is one thing which is all about how to tell a story. Story can be anything. We've heard Cinderella so many times, and still, if somebody tells Cinderella interestingly, we want to sit down and listen to Cinderella. We all have a child within, and a child within us definitely want to listen to the story. We have a great example of Murari Bapu in our language, who tells Ramayana. Ramayana is one story which probably no Hindu child has never heard before. They have been hearing it since they are little child, little things keep coming from Ramayana to them. And still, 25,000, 30,000 people go to listen to him. He tells the same story. There is hardly anything that he makes as a change. And still people listen to him. It's because he knows how to tell a story. And I think novel is all about how to tell a story, and I thank Salman Rushdie to initiate this talk here. If he had not written this, probably we wouldn't have spoken about it. He should come here and see the writers they have gathered here and the galaxy that we have here. We have Sitanshu Bhai, we have so many other names here who have proven themselves time and again by putting great works, and I think they have been translated in many languages. I have very few examples to quote here. Girish Karnad writes in his own language. Amrita Pritam wrote all her life in her own language. And she's been translated into so many languages. Satyana Prayogo is written in Gujarati, and it has been translated in almost all the languages of the world. I don't think language is a barrier. I never felt language is a barrier. I read and write almost 5 languages, And I still feel I want to write in my own language. Because I can't dream in any other language but Gujarati. I can't express my pain in any other language but Gujarati. I can't call anybody mom but my own mother. They can be Masima, they can be Kakima, they can be Bijima, they can be like my mom. But my mother is just the one. So I personally feel that language cannot be a barrier for any writer or any person who wants to express one's own self. Expression is such a worldwide thing. God has made so many faces and no one is alike. No two people can look alike exactly the same. We all have different fingerprints and we all have different expressions. And I think different expressions should be in different languages. I have my own set of stories to tell, and you have your own set of stories to tell. Let's get together and make a wonderful story together. The last thing that I would like to say is my one wonderful experience at the airport. I was at the airport and I was trying to look for some gift for somebody as a book. And I asked the bookshop owner, I said, कुछ अच्छा है आपके पास गुजराती में किसी को देने के लिए? The guy comes to me and gives me my own book and tells me, Krishna and ले जाइए, it's one of the best books. इसका 6 भाषा में अनुवाद है, आपको जिस भाषा में चाहिए मैं दे सकता हूँ. Said, you keep all? Said, yes, I keep all of them. So I think if a bookshop owner can sell 6 languages of the same novel, we all can also sell our own language, talk about our own language, and tell a wonderful story together. Thank you so much.
Now we understand why you are so energetic and so popular. Now I request Dr. Rai, Pratibha Rai, to talk about, or reflect on the theme of the session and relate it to her own writing.
Very warm greetings to all of you in the cold morning. I thank the organizers and congratulate them. I thank Jatin for making us serious and also relaxed to face the elite audience. Today the theme of the session is Great Indian Novel with a question mark. That question mark really created so many question marks in this writer's psyche. Why there is a question mark? Great Indian novels, a question mark. What does it mean? I could not understand. Jatin told me, you explain it. So I am not going to explain, but the question, why the question marks in my mind? Does it mean there are no great Indian novels? Or does it mean there are many great Indian novels in many languages? What is that? And Jatin told us to define a great novel. It is difficult because as a writer I will say there will be no single complete definition of greatness of a novel. So people will definitely differ. What I will say, it will not be satisfactory for you. You may say another definition. You may add some more criteria. What are the rules? What are the formulae to define a novel great? As a writer, instinctively, I am resistant to any rules, any definition, any fixed formulae. So, I thought over it, and I remembered the novel, it is mentioned in the screen, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Of course, it is not Indian novel, but I read Uncle Tom's Cabin in Indian language, in my language, that is the translation. Toma Kakanka Kutira. When I was in school, in class 11, and I thought that it is originally written by Udayanath Sarangi, who has translated it. And when I read Uncle Tom's Cabin in Odia, in my language, in my mother tongue, I felt that something is changing, some transformation in me. I was transformed. So I think when you read a great novel, for me, it is for me, not for everybody, you think that the internal planes in you are shifted, are elevated, and things will never quite be same again after reading a book. And there may be some criteria. A great novel may challenge who we are, what we believe, and what we possess, the power of change, our viewpoints about something, however certain that viewpoint is, it might be changing after reading a great novel. And moreover, a great novel have the quality of language. I am coming to language. High quality of language and style. And only for high quality of language and style, a novel cannot be great. Along with that, there should be complexity of theme and memorability, universality, and the power to transform. I am not going to more definition. You may add to it, because literature is not mathematics. 5 plus 3 is 8. It may be 5 plus 3 is equal to 10. In literature, you can make it. As writers, you have the power to make 5 plus 3, 10. So this is the concept of great novel in me. As Gitanjali said about Salman Rushdie, really Salman Rushdie is welcomed. I should congratulate him for challenging the Indian writers. I am not a great writer. I have not yet created a great novel. But in my language, there are many great novels. In my language, in Odia, I am not coming to Indian languages. There are many great Indian novels. In my language, I would have been very happy if I would have been seen the title of Amrutar Santan, Paraja, even Loya Viloya by Gopinath Mahanti, even Chauman Atagunt. They are great novels. When I read the novels, I was thinking, could I be able to write a book like this as a writer? This was my feeling. I was wondering, how could a writer write like this? And a great novel, I am quoting Gopinath Mahanti in his book Amrutar Santan, the power of great novel to overcome failure, overcome death, overcome tragedy, to fight and to be positive towards life. The last line of his novel Amrutar Santan is, Jibanare swada achi, marana nahi. There is no death. There is no death because life is so beautiful. The meaning is, the life is so beautiful. There is taste in life. There is no death, no death. We should not fear death because life is so beautiful. In spite of all the tragedy, the protagonist is thinking. This is the last line of the novel. This is just a glimpse of a great novel. So, friends, if Salman Rushdie has dismissed that vernacular language, the literature written in vernacular language has no literary value, it is his ignorance, I will say. It is our advantage that we can read Rushdie's novel and our novel, Indian novels. It is his disadvantage that he cannot read our novels. So, we are in an advantageous situation and we will go on writing in our language, and I am not coming what critics have said about English, Indians writing in English and Indian writings in their vernacular language. According to foreign critics, Indian literature is more powerful written in vernacular languages than Indian literature written in English writing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rai, for making such illuminating comments. Now I request Cecil to make his observation.
Dear friends, today it is my privilege to stand in front of you as a young Gujarati novelist. Now I love this tag, young Gujarati novelist, especially young part. At the age of 41, if I still labeled as young and not middle-aged, it's fun, I mean, it's party time. We had party last night actually. Sometimes I'm even branded as a popular writer and an emerging new voice in contemporary Gujarati novel. Popular, yes, simply because both of my novels have been serialized in popular magazines. So by default or by design, it made me popular. But a new voice, too many questions, and that definitely marks my today's topic, that is dilemma of a young novelist. Being a voice in a field of writing generally means writing stuff that possesses strong literary values, being closer to classicism. Now, as per popular perception, isn't being popular and being classically heavy are two different things, even sometimes opposite entities? So, what am I? What I want to become eventually? A popular writer or a voice loaded with classicism? Now, my answer is both. I want to become both. I want to be popular and I want to become a voice as well. Now, let me say something about my school days. When I was in school, my sisters were in college. And I was just 10, 11, 12 years old. And my sister used to study BA. And they didn't even bother to buy textbooks. All they used to read was guides to textbooks. So they had ready-made question answers. And I used to read that material, which was meant for BA students, and which ready-made question answers. But इसमें ऐसा होता है कि चंद्रकांत बख्शी की कहानी, मधुरा की कहानी, इस कविता में क्या अभिप्राय थे वो समझाइए, इसका रसदर्शन करवाइए, this and that. And I used to love it. I was so keen, I was so fascinated by that material. I was even more sincere than my sisters. The point is, it is classic criticism that became foundation of my literary understanding. It is the serious literature that unknowingly became my foundation, my base. So classic criticism, serious literature, not popular literature. But at the same time, I was exposed to popular literature, pulp fiction as well. Because in Gujarati newspapers and magazines, they do publish Dharavahik Novelkatha. And I used to love them. I grew up on them. So these are my DNA, classic criticism and serialized novels. So these are my base, these are my genes. And it baffles me. Means why do I separate, compartmentalize these two things? Do I mean that popular literature cannot be classic and classic literature cannot be popular? Does this mean that I'm conditioned already to think this way? And does this also mean that since I'm an emerging writer, as an emerging popular writer, I would not be taken seriously automatically? But however, something gives me comfort, thinking that some great names from my language, that is Churchill Meghani and Kanhaiyalal Munshi, they did some work in serialized format. Even we know Charles Dickens has done something in serialized format. Even Tolstoy has done his work, some of his best works, classic works in serialized manner. War and Peace and Anna Karenina. They were popular then, and they were classics. Today even they are being read. So let's just get away with this fight of popular versus classic. And I am greedy writer. I mean, I want everything. I want my readers. Oh yes, lots of them, because they are the readers. Readers are the ones who make everything, makes the whole process so lively, so exciting. But at the same time, I don't want to be Rakhi Sawant of Gujarati literature. Now, Rakhi Sawant is, of course, must be a great lady, and I wouldn't mind going date with her. I'm using her name just as a metaphor. But what I mean to say is, I don't want, I wouldn't, in order to seek attention and to be seen constantly in newspapers, I can't be what Rakhi Sawant does. I can't sensationalize. I don't want to be sensation. Just because I also need critical acceptance as well. Not because it's cool to be accepted by critics, but since, as I just said, my literary senses are born out of classic criticism, it is my DNA. So basically, I want both the words. I want my readers and I want critical acceptance. Now, my dilemma as young upcoming novelist is, will I find some magic formula to ensure and balance both popularity as well as classicism? That it also brings me to some other dilemma. Here I'm a Gujarati writer. If Gujarati writer or a Bengali writer or Odia writer or some from regional writers, how much popular he can be? Yeah. It's complex country, and we have multiple languages. So, in such a scenario, can a great Indian novel actually be born? Let's assume a great regional novel is spotted in some regional language. But what's the next step? Will it generate, won't it be confined in its own language, on a state? For great regional novel to become a great Indian novel, it has to go to English first, and then maybe in so many years, it will gradually go to other languages. Does it essentially mean that great Indian novel will almost never assume its deserving greatness and stature in real time? It's difficult. I mean, there are a lot of questions, lots of ifs and buts. There are too many ifs and buts. Yes, translations do happen. Exchange between languages take place. But I think the force is missing, awareness is missing, reach is missing. Perhaps Indian novelists writing in English is in far better position compared to us. We have to accept our dependency on English translation in order to reach national and maybe international audience. We have to accept boundaries of Indian languages. So maybe great Indian regional novel is a myth, an illusion, something that can never happen in real time. Maybe we should not attach too much attention to external greatness. Whether it is read by millions or read by hundreds, great literature is always a great literature. So with too many questions and too many dilemmas, I rest my case. Thanks.
Thank you, Sisir, for your very interesting presentation. When I sent these questions to our participants, I was playing safe, because Bernard Shaw said that those who can't teach, those who can't write, translate. So since I'm a translator, I thought talking about novels should be left to the novelists. So they should define what is greatness, what is a great novel. And so now that all our four distinguished panelists have made their presentations, I would now request the members of the audience to ask questions. And I invite questions from the audience, and of course they will try their best to answer them. Thank you.
we have an excellent... Thank you. Thank you, panel. We have an excellent panel here. I just have a comment, not any specific question to Kajal. I have a comment for Kajal. See, I just reminded when Kennedy, after being the President of the United States, landed in Germany, he said, "Ich bin eine Berliner." That he said, and that touched the heart of people. Kajal, you have said some beautiful words in Odia language that has touched the heart, our heart, and you belong to us. And about Salman Rushdie, I liked him, but I have to tell you one thing, Mere Bharat Mahan, we have given him shelter, we have given him food, we gave him home, and this is the home he stands, and he doesn't understand this country. He speaks only one language, maybe two or maybe three. Most Indians speak more than 9 languages. He doesn't know anything ABC of this country. He's just a spoiled brat. He is a novelist. He is renowned. But he's one of these millions of novelists of this country. He's not any better than anyone. Any of our regional novelists, or any of these panel people. I'm sorry about his comments. If he was here, I would have reacted to him. I would have defended myself.
What's your question, sir?
We don't care.
Any questions?
I would like to ask a question to Dr. Pratibha Rai, the eminent Odia novelist. I have read his wonderful novel, Jagyaseni. Madam, how do you look at the novel as a metaphor for women's suffering? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question. I wrote the novel 27 years back. If I say something, that will be definitely afterthought. I think after writing a novel, the novelist has nothing to say. But as you have asked the questions, it is not a metaphor for women suffering only. In my novel, I am very sorry that the novel is read by many. They only, because I don't know whether I am a woman writer, I don't believe in man writer, woman writer, but I am a woman. Therefore, they think that I have only written from the point of view of women suffering and women. In my novel, that is a metaphor for human suffering, not only women suffering. And the main issue of the novel is world peace. No war. No war to the world. The planet must survive. That is the main concern as a writer to me. So, of course, women suffering is there. Women are also human beings. I think I answered your question.
I would like to add. Women's suffering has been a myth almost now. Let us face it. Times have changed. Women work, urban women especially, have really come up with lot of things and lot of achievements. I think women's suffering has been glorified for a very long time. And I personally feel that things should be looked at the way she said. It should be human suffering and not just woman suffering. This is what I also believe. Thank you.
Sir, we are discussing the translation from one language to another. Sometimes we observe, literature is being transferred to another form of art also, like say drama, film. And it's observed when literature is being translated or transformed to another form of art, the original tone, the original feelings of a particular novel or a story get diminished or distorted in second form of art. So my feeling is whether a writer should be cautious while allowing such things, or there are some situations and under compulsion they allow such forms. Kindly react.
Let me first answer this question. Yes, when you translate, we translate the culture. When you translate a language from another language, we translate the culture. We take it to another culture. There will definitely loss of something, but sometimes it is also very, very much enriched by a translator. It is not always loss. So sometimes the original book is much more readable and much more near the heart by a translator. The recent Nobel Prize went to the Chinese writer Mo Yan. In an interview, the writer said, "I don't know any other foreign languages except I know only my language, my mother tongue, that is Chinese, and I write in that. If a translator is translating it, let him translate, let him whatever he does." So he has given all the liberty to the translator, and I think the translator has definitely given the justice to the writer. So translation should be encouraged. Unless, how can Salman Rushdie read our literature? It should be translated. So our vernacular literature is really, it is really losing its greatness inside the narrow boundary of that region. So it should be translated. Translators should be encouraged. Jatin Babu is a very good translator. So translators like him should be encouraged.
We have a wonderful word called bhavanuvad. It's the bhav which should be translated, the thought which should be translated correct. Maybe some languages do not have the correct words for it. We have a wonderful translator called Jhaverchand Meghani, and he has translated great works from English to Gujarati. Somebody's Darling is almost forgotten, and Koino Ladakwayo is remembered as Meghani's work. So sometimes it also adds. It's not every time that it diminishes.
It is transcreation, always. It is not translation.
Please.
I think there's... is it working? I think there's absolutely no question that translation is an important exercise. But I think some works lend themselves much easier to translation than others. And I think what is important, I'm trying to say something, I'm unsure I'll be able to say it very well, let me try. But I think interactions of this kind between languages also make people familiar with each other's frames of reference, the atmospheres of their lives. And that does make translation a much more viable exercise. So I think there's something apart from translation, along with translation, which also needs to be done, and that is interactions of this kind. I'm not sure I've said it in quite how I tried.
Mr. Sen? Yeah. Lend you mine.
I really have enjoyed this session enormously. We've had 3, and I think this is by far the finest. And it's really because the writers' quality and the way they actually spoke with sincerity. I think the word sincerity I would underline as great importance, and intelligence, of course, backing it up. It's not so much of a question, but since I also translate from 3 languages, I have 3 mother tongues, Bangla, Hindi and English, even though I write in only one of them creatively. If we take translation as a familial object, and rather than fighting and debating over that there are 2 different sides of the same story, but 2 essential sides of the same body, then I think we get a lot more out of both literature written in the source language and the translated language. Translations have obviously their flaws, but 90% of my education is through translation. I wouldn't know the world literatures if they were not provided to me in some translated form or the other. Now, whether or not is a translation is of high quality is a very different kind of discussion. I think you raised this lovely word called bhav. With bhav, you need the ras. And then once you put it together, it's a musical language and a language of great depth. Gitanjali brought up the situation where is it possible to translate? And because I'm largely in the field of poetry, it's even more complicated. Ideally, I've seen, certainly in the world of poetry, if the translator knows the translator's language and the original, if you can work together, and that happens a lot in poetry, you go back and forth with each other. If the writer is amenable and if the writer is alive, then the quality of translation could be not just equally as good, sometimes even superior. So we shouldn't kind of box it in. I think they are part of the same larger beast.
Any more questions?
I have a question for Kajal Ojha Vaidya. My name is Himangsu Mahapatra. I teach English at Utkal University. Madam, I have great respect for you. Madam, you are a very prolific novelist. I haven't read any of your novels, I must confess. But based on what you said, I have 2 questions for you. Based on what you said that you write novels for women who can return to their novel or reading after they have finished their household chores. They can sit on the sofa and read your novels. Now, implicit in that statement is a certain view of the novel as a kind of, it's something that simply confirms the illusion of middle-class existence. I want to know, because I haven't read your novel, do you write to explore the self-complacency of the middle-class woman, or do you write to reconfirm that sense of self-complacency? 1. Number 2, you talked about your knowledge of several languages, but you said that you are attached to only one language, your mother tongue. But let us not forget that here we are deliberating in a language which is not our mother tongue. We are all talking in English, and English is the language of aspiration. Now my question is, does that sentimental attachment to the language translate into a position...
Sorry, can you repeat your second question?